Yo, what's going on, guys? So I'm super excited to make this video because this video is everything anyone's ever looking for. This is it. This is as logical, rational, simple, practical, common sense as it gets. What I'm giving you is the absolute truth of who you are and what this is, why you're here, how it works, all right? And I'm going to be doing so through using one passage from the Bible, and only one passage. This is the only passage you ever need to read. This is the epitome of the entire Bible. This is everything the Bible is trying to tell you, okay? Now, I just want to say, you don't need the Bible to know who you are, because you are who you are. By being yourself, that is intuitively knowing yourself. Because I am who I am, I know who I am. Being myself is intuitively knowing myself as the absolute truth of self-knowledge, which is intuition, which is everything the Bible's trying to tell you. So what I'm about to share with you here is the knowledge of who I am, which is not any relative knowledge as some kind of speculation or personal opinion, but the absolute truth of the intuition of self-knowledge. Because I am who I am, I know who I am. Being myself is intuitively knowing myself. Okay? And I know who I am because I am who I am. And that's what we're going to see here in this verse in the Bible. So I have an NIV version of the Bible, which isn't necessarily the best version. It's just the easiest to read, but it doesn't really matter. So we're going to go to, it's page 58, Exodus chapter 3, verses 14 and 15. All right? Now, up to this point in the Bible, you have God, this all-powerful, scary, mysterious being who's giving these orders and performing these miracles. And everybody's curious, what is God's name? Who is he? So we get to this point where Moses meets God face to face at the top of Mount Sinai at the burning bush. Maybe you might have heard of that before. Right, so now we're here at this point. Let's get into this and read what we're saying here. Moses said to God, "Suppose I go to the Israelites," which is humanity, "and say to them, 'The God of your fathers has sent me to you.' And they ask me, 'What is his name?' Then what shall I tell them?" So Moses is asking God, when I meet with humanity and they ask me, what is God's name? Who is God? What do I say? God said to Moses, "I am who I am." This is what you are to say to the Israelites, or humanity. "I am has sent me to you." God also said to Moses, "Say to the Israelites," or humanity, "The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob," which means the God of humanity, the God of humanity, and the God of humanity, "has sent me to you. This is my name forever, the name you shall call me from generation to generation." There you go. That's all you need in the Bible. What verse did we just read? We just read the verse where God has told Moses who he is. Moses has just found out who God is, what God's name is, okay? God said his name is I am. Moses asks God, "Who are you?" God answers, "I am who I am." I am is who I am. Okay? That's all we need. So, if I ask you, who was the first president of the United States of America? Your only answer is George Washington. Now, if I ask you, who is God? Your only answer is, I am. I am God. Idiot! Like, people don't have common sense. It drives me nuts. Makes me want to bang my head on a wall, bro. Who is missing that? How are you missing this? It's common sense. It's right fucking there. Read it. Like, bro. And then people will sit here and they'll call me schizophrenic. They'll call me crazy. I'm the only one with any fucking common sense here. I'm the only one paying attention. Read it. It says it right there. God said, I am God. Dumbass. So, what verse did we just read? Exodus chapter 3, verses 14 and 15. What number is that? The number of pi. 3.1415. Do you think that that's all just a coincidence? We just read in the Bible. We all just found out who God is. And it's you. I am God. That's what God said. Moses asks God, who are you? God says, I am who I am. Who is God? I am God. Forever and ever, that is my name. I am. Okay? Which is life in language. So God is life. Life is who you are. Life is what we're calling God as the self-expression or affirmation, I am. Okay? 3.1415 is the number of pi. And we use that number to find what? The circumference of a circle. Where do you think circumference comes from? It comes from circumcision, which comes from the Bible, which is all throughout the Bible. Circumcision, which is still something that we practice today in the wrong way, which is a reflection of a symbolic, mystical, spiritual truth. Okay? And that practice is cutting off the foreskin from a baby's penis. What happens when you cut off the foreskin from a baby's penis? When you cut off the foreskin from the penis, the head of the penis is revealed. Okay? Now, when someone is the boss or leader or in charge of something, what do we call them? The head of the household, the head of the business, the head honcho, the boss, the king, the leader in charge. Okay? Who is the king, the leader, the boss in charge? God. Okay? So, circumcision as the circumcision of the penis is the revelation of God as self-knowledge, the knowledge of who I am. And as God said, I am God. That is the circumcision of the Spirit, the revelation of God as circumcision, which is where circumference comes from, right? Pi, the number that we use to find the circumference of a circle, is enlightenment as the knowledge of God. The circumference of the circle is the knowledge of God, where circumference in reference to circumcision is revelation as self-knowledge, the revelation of who I am, and I am who I am as God. This isn't all just a coincidence. These things don't just line up for no reason, bro. There's an infinite amount of numbers in the world. There's infinite amount of numbers. Pi is an irrational number. It breaks down to 3.1415. The verse of the Bible that reveals to you are God is Exodus chapter 3, verses 14 and 15, 3.1415. Come on, bro. It's written in the stars. And people will just say this is schizophrenic. It's just synchronicities. It's just people, like, putting things together that aren't really there. You're blind. You're not seeing what's right in front of you, bro. It's impossible that this just all lines up. And then this happens to be the number pi, which is used to find the circumference of a circle. And then circumcision is the revelation of God as the exposure of the head. The revelation of God is self-knowledge, as the knowledge of who I am. And as God just said, who is God? I am God. I am who I am. And so therefore, because I am who I am, I know who I am. That's the whole point of the Bible. Who else do you think you are? What else do you think this could possibly be? You're alive. You're alive. Look around. Look. How do you think you're here? It's not so common sense when you're just going through the motions of life. You never think about it. But when you just take a step back for a half second, who the fuck else do you think there is to be? There's only one being, as the immortal being of eternal life, who I am as I am forever right here, right now. Like, that is the intuition of self-knowledge as the absolute truth of who I am as I am, because I am who I am, so I know who I am, and I'm telling you the truth. It's the absolute truth. It can't be changed. Doesn't matter what you think or how you feel. This is real as the truth. I am the way, the truth, and the life. Do you actually really think that people like Jesus and Buddha and Krishna and Hermes, they become worshipped because they're walking around saying that they are God and you're not? These people become worshipped because they're walking around telling you that you are God. Do you honestly think that Jesus died on the cross so that you would believe he died on the cross? Do you think Jesus died on the cross so that you would believe that he's God? Jesus died on the cross so that you would know that you are God. Because God said that I am who he is. I am God. That's what God himself said. That's what Jesus died on the cross for. He was trying to show people this, and some people didn't understand that and disagreed with him, and so they killed him for it. It's no coincidence, bro, that the greatest story ever told is the story of Jesus Christ in the greatest book ever wrote, which is the Holy Bible, which the majority of the world is founded upon. The Holy Bible, through the story of Jesus Christ, is the foundation for most of human society. It just so happens to be that that story, at the climax of this story, you have some guy, a man named Jesus. And what's he doing? He's walking around calling himself God. And so what happens to him? He gets killed for it. But he's not just calling himself God. He's saying that you are God, I am God, you are God, we are God, because he's saying there is only God, who I am as I am, because God said that who he is I am. So Moses asks God, who are you? God says, I am who I am. So if I ask you, who is the greatest quarterback of all time? Tom Brady, right? Who is God? I am. I am God, okay? Like, come on, bro. You know what I mean? Like, so Jesus is trying to show you that if God said, I am he, if God said, I am who I am, he's saying that we are God because there is only God. So yes, Jesus is saying that Jesus is God, but he's also saying Hunter is God. He's also saying Joe Schmo, Jane Doe, John Deere is God. Because everybody's an incarnation of God. As the Son of God, everybody is God. Like, bruh. Come on, man. So it just so happens to be that the greatest story ever told is about some guy running around calling himself God, and then he's killed for it, just to be proven right. It just so happens to be that's the whole climax of the whole story of the Bible and the story of Jesus Christ, that people kill each other over some guy calling himself God. And they're saying, people are arguing over as to whether Jesus was God or not. It said it right there. Of course he was, because you are. Why are you worried about if Jesus is God or not? Aren't you worried about if you are? Duh. You know what I'm saying? So, I'll leave it off on this last thing, right? There's two different levels, and I'm going to relate this to Buddhism. It drives me nuts, guys. Like, I want to, bang my head on a wall, because it's just crazy. How I'm the only one with common sense. Like, you guys wouldn't believe how I've tried sharing this with people, and they all look at me like I got 3 heads. I'm the only one with common fucking sense. I'm the only one that has any kind of brain around here. I'm the only one paying any kind of attention. And I do all this, I could just keep all this to myself. I don't have to share this with anybody. I don't have to waste my breath. But I do because I love you and I'm trying to help you. Because I want you to be your best self and live your best life. And then these people will be the first ones to go behind my back and call me crazy and all this bullshit. And they get in their own way and their own worst enemy, holding themselves back. It's just so frustrating. It's like, bro, if you listen to me, you would be doing a lot better for yourself. You know what I mean? Instead, you're too busy calling me crazy. It says it in the Bible, bro. It's in the Bible. Read it. Read it, bro. Please. So I'm going to leave it off with this last analogy, which is what parables are. They're analogies. Jesus is using everyday things that everyday average Joe Schmoes do to simplify the nature of God, who God is, who we are, what this is, why we're here, the nature of reality and how it works, what's really going on here. So that's why he's using analogies like fishing, gardening, baking bread, you know what I mean? Farming. Everyday average Joe Schmo things that everybody does or everybody knows something that does it. That anyone can relate to understand the nature of God. Okay? So there's 2 different levels to the relationship that someone can have with God. These relationships are in forms of intimacy, which means how unified you are with God, how close you are to God, okay? So at the first lower level is the average level that most people are familiar with, which is the relationship of duality, which means individuality between oneself and God, where I and God are 2 individual beings other than each other. Okay? This is what's called dualism. It's a relationship of theism, which is the belief that God exists as his own individual being other than oneself, where me and God are 2 individual beings other than each other, as 2 independent entities other than each other. Okay? That is duality. Individuality between oneself and God, which is what's called theism, the belief that God exists as a different being than me. Okay? And then there's atheism, the belief that there's no being at all, which makes no sense, because you believe that as a conscious being. You believe there is no conscious being. Okay, that doesn't even make any sense. You exist to believe there is no existence. You are reality to believe reality isn't real. You are existence to believe existence doesn't exist. All right. That's atheism. Makes the least sense. So then there's theism, the belief that God exists as a different being other than me. Well, Jesus and the Bible and Buddha and Krishna and every religion on this planet teaches is mysticism, which is called extreme theism, which is the truth that there is only God. Only God exists. If we use an analogy, the universe is the dream of life in the mind of God. God is everywhere, everyone, and everything. Everything is an emanation of God. Everyone is an incarnation of God, because the universe is a manifestation of God as a vision in his mind, which means a materialization of himself, which means a vision of your mind, a materialization of yourself. Because who is God? I am God. I and the Father are one same being, not two different beings. So then there's the relationship of non-duality, non-individuality between me and God. Me and God are not two individual beings other than each other, but one same being as oneself, because there is only one self as God. Not two independent entities, but one interdependent entity. Okay? One being with two sides. Not two different beings. Alright? So there's the relationship of God. If God is the ocean of life, humanity are the fishes, are the fish in the ocean. Okay? So there's God and man as the ocean and the fish. Every fish lives in the ocean, and the ocean lives in every fish. Everybody lives in God, and God lives in everybody. And this is how the church will try to interpret the scriptures, to try to show you how, yes, you are one with God. As in, you are in God, and God is in you. The fish are in the ocean is in the fish. Everybody is in God, and God is in everybody. But let's say a fisherman comes along and catches the fish and reels the fish out of the ocean to be cooked and eaten. This represents the devil. The devil has come along and snatched you away and separated you from God. So this is still a level of individuality between oneself and God, because the fish can be reeled out of the ocean. And now the fish is dead in the fisherman's bucket. So now you have the ocean and the fish as two individual beings or independent entities. Now the fish exists entirely independent of the ocean, outside of the ocean in the fisherman's bucket. All right? So we could say that's the devil, and you're in hell, which is stupid. It doesn't exist. So now we can step it up. Now we can step it up to the next level, which is what Jesus is trying to teach you, which is a higher unity with God. Now, instead of the ocean and the fish, why don't we try the ocean and the wave? Now, if a fisherman comes along, can the fisherman reel the wave out of the ocean? No, because the wave is the ocean rising and falling, which is God incarnating. Incarnating is living and dying, which means appearing as a man. So there is no such thing as the wave, because the wave is just the ocean rising and falling. There's no such thing as man, because man is just God living and dying. Living and dying is rising and falling as incarnating, which is appearing. So man is how you appear. God is who you are. There's only one being, one life, as the immortal being of eternal life. And every body is a wave of the ocean of eternal life as the immortal being. All right? So that's what's called non-self in Buddhism. There is no such thing as the wave. The wave is just the ocean rising and falling, which means there's no such thing as man. Man is just God living and dying. Waving is what the ocean does as rising and falling. Incarnating is what God does as living and dying. Incarnating is appearing as a man. That's the whole point of what this is. That's what we're doing, is living and dying as a man, okay? Which is appearing as a man, incarnating, manifesting, all right? Which is thinking. So that's why it said, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. God and the Word is the mouth and speech as the mind and thought. God, speaking the universe into existence, is the mind thinking the universe into existence. All right? The mind of God is the tree of life. The tree of life is unified as the trunk and individualized as the branches. The mind of God is unified as the universe and individualized as the brains. All right? So the tree of life is unified as the trunk, individualized as the branch, manifested as the fruit. The mind of God is unified as the universe, individualized as the brain, and materialized as the body. All right? So the trunk as the universe is the spirit. The branch as the brain is the soul. Consciousness as a unified body of light, and consciousness as an individualized ray of light, but it's all the sun as the mind. All right? And then the bodies are the shadows that these rays of light, this body of light is casting, right? The spirit is casting its shadow as the universe. Each soul is casting a shadow as each brain or body. All right? God is the light. So matter can't exist without mind, because shadows can't exist without light. All right? Flesh can't exist without spirit. Man can't exist without God. Shadows are the reflections of light. Light is the mirror. The light of life is the mirror of life as the mind of God, which is the universe, individualized as each brain. Okay? Materialization, the mind materialized as the body, the universe individualized as the brain, is God incarnated as a man. The spirit and the flesh, the mind and the body. Okay? The Christ on the cross. Where is Jesus crucified? The skull. Jesus is crucified at the skull. At the temple, which is the body. Your temples, why do you think they're called your temples? Because the body is the temple of the living God that God dwells within. The spirit and the flesh, the mind and the body, God in man, heaven on earth, the Christ on the cross. The cross is form, which is the brain-body complex, where Christ is nailed to the cross at the skull, the brain, hangs on the cross of the body. Okay? God incarnated as a man. It's symbology. It's trying to tell you who you are. It's trying to tell you you're God. Duh. Okay? So God in man as heaven on earth is oneself as the immortal being and immortal body, which is eternal life. All right? So the body is just the reason why you are awake, not the reason why you are alive. So when your body dies, you're just asleep for a while longer until you wake up again in a new body. And that's reincarnation, which is resurrection. There's only one being that's appearing as everybody. There's only one life living in every form. So the same being that lived as Jesus is the same life that lived as Jesus is the same being, the same life living as you and I, as the immortal being of eternal life, which is God. God is oneself because there is only one self as God. There's no such thing as other. Nothing exists other than God as oneself, because there is only one self as God. There's only one being, one life, as the immortal being of eternal life. Jesus is the personification of life. Life is who you are. life in language is I am. If I use myself as an example, I would say I am Hunter. That's a life form as being human. So this human being as this form of life is a state of mind as the image of oneself. So man made in the image of God is this human being as this form of life, the image of oneself. The body opposite the mind. Why do you think we call it body image? Because the body is the image of oneself as a thought in the mind. So man is the thought God had of himself and gave birth to himself as you and I. Okay? That's the whole point. So human or man is God's thought of himself. That's what the image of himself means. So when God says we are made in his image, he's saying that a human being as a form of life is the image of oneself as God, life itself. Where a life form is a self-image. That's the mind and the body as being human. I am Hunter, or I am Joe Schmo, John Deere, Jane Doe. So life is the word as the name, which is God, who I am as I am. So that affirmation, I am, the self-expression I am, is the affirmation of the word, which is God speaking things into existence, as the mind thinking things into existence, because God and the word is the mouth and speech as the mind and thought, where God speaking things into existence with his mouth is you thinking things into existence with your mind. Thinking, feeling, doing. Cognition, emotion, action. Thinking, feeling, and doing is behaving as materializing, speaking, thinking, creating. You are the creator, creating creation as creation creating itself, which is God and the word, the mind and thought, the mouth and speech. The mouth speaking the universe into existence is the mind thinking the universe into existence as God, incarnating himself as all of existence, which is you, as all of existence. I am who I am. All right? So this is the whole point of what the Bible's trying to symbolize. It's trying to teach you who you are. I don't know why they try to teach these things in such like a symbolic, annoying way. It's so annoying how they be doing this. That's why you don't need it. You don't need the Bible because it's a waste of time. You can learn all of this without the Bible because you are who you are. So just by being yourself is knowing yourself. So because you are who you are, you know who you are. And you know who you are because you are who you are. So being yourself is knowing yourself because being itself is knowing itself. And that's the absolute truth as the intuition of self-knowledge. So that's where none of this is some kind of personal opinion or speculation. It's the intuition of self-knowledge as the absolute truth of God. I am the way, the truth, and the life. All right? That's why it's said in the Bible, be still and know that I am God, as the immortal being of eternal life. Now this is eternal life, that they may know you, God the Father, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, who you sent. Sent means who you incarnated as. Okay? The Son of God is the incarnation of God. So that's why in the Bible, we are the gods as the children of God. The children of God means the incarnations of God, like branches to a trunk. So that's why God is both singular as the trunk and plural as the branches, but it's all one as the tree of life. Okay? So that's how God is both Yahweh, singular, and the Elohim, plural, as the trunk and the branches, but it's all one tree. It's all one God. In a unified sense, as the trunk, it's Yahweh. In an individualized or pluralized sense, as the branches, it's the Elohim. God and the gods as the incarnations of God. Okay? So there are many gods, but only one God. because there are many incarnations of one God, many different versions of one same being. All right? That's what all this is. That's how we are the Elohim, as the children of God who walk in darkness. That means we live in ignorance. And the ignorance is the foreskin that we must circumcise to reveal the head, to experience the revelation of God through self-knowledge, to know oneself. Okay? Which is the truth of divinity and immortality, because God is oneself as the immortal being of eternal life. All right? There's the ocean and the wave as life and form. Every time a wave rises and falls, there's only one ocean that rises and falls as each and every wave. Whenever a wave rises and falls, the ocean never appears nor disappears. So every time God lives and dies as you and I, as a human, God is never born and never dies. God is beyond birth and death and eternal life. Okay? So there's only one God that lives and dies as every body. There's only one ocean that rises and falls as each and every wave. And although each and every wave rises and falls, the ocean never appears nor disappears. So God is the only life that lives and dies as every body. And although every body lives and dies, God is never born and never dies, because God is beyond birth and death and eternal life. God is the ocean of life that rises and falls as each and every wave. Although each and every wave rises and falls, the ocean never appears nor disappears. So God lives and dies as everybody, but is never born and never dies, because God is beyond birth and death as eternal life, which is who you are. So you are beyond the birth and death of the body, because the tree is beyond the growth and decay of the fruit. All right? So that's the truth of what's going on here. The conception, crucifixion, and resurrection of Christ is the incarnation of God, which is birth and death and eternal life. The ocean rises and falls, waves, but never appears or disappears. God lives and dies or incarnates, but is never truly born or dies. So that's how you are as the soul, spirit, or mind, the branch, trunk, or tree of life. You are the immortal being in a mortal body, which is the Christ on the cross, nailed to the cross at the skull of Golgotha, the temple of God, that God dwells within, the spirit and the flesh, the mind and the body, God and man as heaven on earth, the immortal being in a mortal body, the Christ on the cross. That's the whole story. All right? So who is God? I am God. Be still and know that I am God. Now this is eternal life, that they may know you, the one and only true God, and Jesus Christ, who you have sent. So you are the immortal being of eternal life. That's what this whole thing is all about. All right? So, well, I guess I wanted this to be short, but this is how it ended up coming out. I apologize for, I guess being a bit agitated in this video. I'm just frustrated at the lack of, common sense that, the people that I've tried sharing this with have had. I think it would just be nice for me to finally, have my own family or people that understand me and that are on this same path as me, to share in this experience with. But that's okay. It'll come in time. But that's pretty much it. So I just wanted to show you how being God is not schizophrenic, it's mathematic. Exodus 3.1415, who is God? I am God. It's no coincidence. That's the number of pi used to find the circumference of a circle. Circumference comes from circumcision, which is the exposure of the head of the penis, which is the revelation of the knowledge of God. The knowledge of God is self-knowledge as the intuition of who I am, the absolute truth of self-knowledge as the intuition of who I am. And I know who I am because I am who I am. So if God is who I am God because I am who I am and I know who I am. Being myself is knowing myself, and that's the absolute truth of God as the way, the truth, and the life. And that's the whole point of what this is. So that's what this video is going to mean. Being God is common sense. It's just not common knowledge as public knowledge. It's extreme theism as only God, only the mind, absolute idealism. The mind is the universe as God, the creative principle of life. The word is the name as the mind, the state of being as I am, who I am as life itself. The self-expression or affirmation I am is the word. God speaking the universe into existence is the mind thinking the universe into existence, which is you. The creator creating creation is creation creating itself, all right? That's what this all comes down to. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I think that this video is very interesting. I think it helps to show you that there's no such thing as a coincidence. There's no such thing as coincidences, because it's no coincidence that you are here. You are the purpose as purpose. You are purpose itself. There's no coincidence in that. You are purpose, and that is your purpose, is being yourself. And now you know who you are. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I love you, and I'll be back with the next video ASAP.